So I just recently did updated head-to-heads against the 4070 for both of these AMD GPUs. We've got the 6950 XT, and I've got the Merc 319 version of that. And the 6800 XT, I've got the Asus TUF Gaming. And against the 4070, these are very interesting matchups. Where the 6800 XT costs about $100 less. It's currently available for about a couple of models here for about $510. And then if you look at the RTX 4070, it costs about $600 and gives you about the same performance unless you're using ray tracing. However, it does have better image upscaling, it has frame generation, it has lower energy usage. There are certainly an argument to be made for the 4070, though it's 12 gigabytes of VRAM versus 16. But then there's also the interesting comparison point of the 6950 XT at $630, so just a little bit more, and I actually have seen it sell right at $600, but the current price as of today is $630 if I was buying right now. Where, again, this actually gives you a little bit more performance than the 4070. Again, has more VRAM, costs about the same, draws a lot more power, and the 4070, again, has, the NVIDIA features, all of that. But in this video, I want to explore, okay, so you've decided you want the 16 gigabytes of VRAM, you want to go with the AMD route, but which of the two should you buy? The 6950 XT at around $630, or the 6800 XT at about $510. And I'm going to tell you which one in just a second, but first, I'm really excited about today's sponsor, Homemade Tunes, because as a content creator, I'm interested in getting more music added into my videos when I have time, but it needs to be royalty-free. That's honestly a big reason why I haven't been doing that. I don't want to get copyright strikes, all of that. Maybe you're a streamer similarly interested. However, maybe you're just bored with your current music library. You want to consider checking out Homemade Tunes. They're on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Music. I think I'll have a link to their YouTube in the video description and pinned comment. And they have posted 4 albums and an EP in 2023 alone. That's a total of 2.5 hours of not boring music. It's instrumental and electronic music, so it's perfect for just chilling, gaming, studying, keeping your party alive, or like I said, as background music in a stream or YouTube video with no copyright issues. So without fear of any copyright takedown, which is a big fear on YouTube for the last few years, like I said, why I don't have a lot of music in my videos, well, Homemade Tunes is here to help, so you can take advantage of the free download of their Tectonic Shift album available on homemadetunes.com and take your content to the next level today. And again, link in the video description. Okay, so we need to establish how much of a performance difference do you actually get between these two GPUs. And is it a meaningful enough difference to justify the price difference? Let's hop into a bunch of the latest games. I want to focus on things like Unreal Engine 5, PS5 exclusive games, right? We really want to focus on the latest and the greatest. And do you get a meaningfully better experience by spending the extra $120 or so on the 6950 XT. Let's do the benchmarks and I'll give you some final thoughts at the end. I still get comments asking why I test Fortnite at such unrealistically high settings for anybody who would actually play the game, and the answer is because I'm not testing Fortnite. I'm testing Unreal Engine 5 with its features like Lumen, Nanite, virtualized shadow maps. This is the engine of the future for a massive number of AAA games, and so I want to test the performance, and right now Fortnite's the game we can do that in. And with that being said, we are seeing a 12% lead for the 6950 XT. And what does that mean in terms of actual performance? So Unreal Engine 5.1, 1440p, Epic settings. We're seeing the 6800 XT right at about a 60 FPS average, although that definitely does mean it dips below 60, smoothed out pretty well on a variable refresh rate display. And the 6950 XT is averaging more in the upper 60s, around 67 FPS, with 1% lows down into the mid 50s. So that's Unreal Engine 1440p Epic settings, but wait, you can turn on RT. Hardware accelerated ray tracing in this game is not particularly demanding, but does still put an extra burden on the GPU, especially AMD GPUs, although they do well here of considering overall ray tracing performance in more demanding games. This makes the Lumen lighting system a little bit more accurate with the hardware accelerated ray tracing turned on. Now we're seeing an 11% lead for the 6950 XT, but more importantly, we're seeing the 6950 XT averaging right about 60 FPS, whereas the 6800 XT is down closer to 52, 53, that kind of a thing. Now, if you do want to enable some image upscaling, this build of the game does not currently have FSR, but it does have TSR, which is pretty similar. It's the Unreal Engine Temporal Super Resolution. And that does boost the 6800 XT into the mid-70s and brings the 1% lows up above 60. And the 6950 XT is averaging around 83 with 1% lows around 70. So overall, actually very good performance here, although TSR quality does not look as good as native in motion. It does look pretty good, though. You can see a little bit more fuzziness on the character. Now, another way to gain performance is just don't play at Epic settings. If you go down to high, we still have Lumen, we still have Nanite, we still have virtualized shadow maps, but things are turned down to the one notch down setting, along with some other things. Anyway, this is just the high preset, and we're now seeing about 100 FPS on the 6800 XT at 1440p, and around 114 FPS on the 6950 XT, giving it about a 13% lead overall. So we're seeing pretty consistent gaps between the two GPUs, and that continues to be the case at 4K Epic settings, about a 13% lead for the 6950 XT. However, what I think is a bit more interesting is just talking about, okay, what about using these GPUs at 4K? It's not that you can't. I just want to show that in heavy-duty new engines like Unreal Engine 5, it's more like a 30 FPS experience on the 6800 XT, and hey, a 36 FPS experience on the 6950 XT. I mean, really 32 on the 6800 XT. But my point is that these aren't going to be maxing out the newest games at 4K. Doesn't mean you can't play them at lower settings, though. Now, if you want to max things out, but you're on a 1080p monitor, good news is Epic settings with RT on, you're averaging in kind of the lower mid-70s on the 6800 XT with the 1% lows over 60, and the 6950 XT is averaging in the lower mid-80s with about a 69 nice FPS average on the 1% lows. If you look at my frame rate counters on the top there, it's the current frame rate on the left, the average in the middle, and the 1% lows on the right. Now, my goal here is to test out the latest and the greatest games, so how about some PS5 exclusive games that have received PC ports? This is The Last of Us Part 1 running at 1440p Ultra, and we're seeing a little over 60 FPS average on the 6800 XT, but going up into the 70s on the 6950 XT, still giving us about an 11% lead. And now this was tested on patch 1.0.2.0. I only bring that up because I think they're up to 1.0.5.0 as of like yesterday or the day before, as of the time of filming. So testing took place a little bit before some of the latest patches. Anyway, if we go up to 4K, well, mid-30s on your 6800 XT, low 40s on the 6950 XT. And, it is what it is. Like I said, you're not going to be maxing out the latest games at 60 FPS at 4K on either of these GPUs. Once again, it's playable, and in reality, if you just turn down some settings, maybe use some upscaling, you will get a very, very playable experience at 4K on both of these GPUs. But again, you just have to make some settings compromises. If you're playing on a 1080p screen, you should have no trouble maxing out games at Ultra. Now, we're only seeing a 7% difference here. So I'm going to kind of keep my eye out on the GPU utilization percentage, see if it drops at all here, because I'm wondering if we're actually seeing a bit of a CPU limitation, although we're staying right around 99% on the GPUs. It just feels like that 7% gap seems a bit off. Now, there's also some variance between runs here, and that could be also contributing to the difference a little bit. But anyway, let's move on to another PS5 console exclusive game, which has a PC port. This is Returnal. We're looking here at the 1440p Epic settings, and we can see that this is much less demanding than The Last of Us, which, like I said, was also a console PS5 exclusive. At 1440p Epic settings here, we are seeing almost 100 FPS on the 6800 XT and about 114 FPS on the 6950 XT, actually about 115, so giving it about a 15% lead overall. Now, if we kick it up to 4K, this is one of the games where you actually can get a pretty much 60 FPS experience average, so it definitely goes below, even on the 6800 XT at 4K. Whereas the 6950 XT is more in the mid-60s, and the 1% lows are a bit higher as well. 14% lead here, so we've seen pretty consistently seem to be between 11 and 15% lead for the 6950 XT in our tests so far. and the resolution hasn't made much difference. Speaking of that, if you do drop down to 1080p Epic settings, we see a 14% lead for the 6950 XT, and the overall frame rates are quite high. Close to 130 FPS on the 6800 XT, getting close to 150, but not quite there on the 6950 XT. Even the 1% lows are quite high, so excellent performance. Also, I just want to give a shout out to this game. If you're into roguelikes, I know not everybody is because of resetting a lot of your progress on a death and all of that. I really do like Returnal. But let's move to one last PS5 console exclusive that has a PC port. This is Forspoken. The ultra high preset is the highest preset, and this one does include RT. We're seeing a 12% lead for the 6950 XT. We're seeing about a 60 FPS experience for the 6800 XT, and more like a 69 nice experience on the 6950 XT. Now, if we go ahead and move up to 4K resolution, we are once again seeing mid-30s on the 6800 XT and upper 30s on the 6950 XT. So once again, neither GPU is just crushing the latest next-gen console-type games at 4K resolution without turning down settings, which is fine. You, like I said, can turn down settings or turn down resolution. If you go down to 1080p, ultra high preset, this includes the ray tracing and all that, and we are averaging in the mid 80s on the 6800 XT and averaging in the mid 90s on the 6950 XT. So yeah, if you're on a 1080p monitor and thinking about either of these GPUs, they're certainly going to give you an excellent experience. Now, the Plague Tale Requiem is not a PS5 exclusive, but it is a next gen, or I guess current gen now, console exclusive in the sense that it's not trying to support older consoles like the PS4 or the Xbox One. We're seeing about a 77 average on the 6800 XT and an 86 average on the 6950 XT. That's a 12% lead for the 6950 XT. Again, very consistent there. And once again, getting very, very playable frame rates at 1440p Ultra. But when we bump up to 4K Ultra, the averages drop down into the lower 40s for the 6800 XT and the mid 40s on the 6950 XT with the 13% lead overall. So once again, showing that the latest and greatest titles maxed out at 4K are definitely not a 60 FPS experience on either GPU. But once again, turning down settings, upscaling, all of that, or just drop into 1080p if you're playing at 1080p. Once again, absolutely crushing it, this time averaging over 110 FPS, about 111 on the 6800 XT, around 123 or so on the 6950 XT. It's an 11% lead. So once again, that anywhere from 11 to 15% lead on the 6950 XT does seem to be very consistent in all titles tested so far, and nothing changes when we look at Resident Evil 4 Remake at 1440p on the max preset, which does include ray-traced reflections, although I'd recommend just turning them off, not just for performance gain, but because honestly the performance here is good. We're around 89 FPS on the 6800 XT and about 101 FPS on the 6950 XT. I just don't think the ray-traced reflections look very good in this game. I also don't think the screen space reflections look good in this game. I actually turned both of those off and thought the cube maps looked better. But anyway, here we see at the 4K maximum preset, we actually go up to a 17% lead for the 6950 XT, which is the widest gap in relative performance we've seen so far, although not too far off of other results. And we're seeing almost 60 FPS on the 6800 XT and about 69 nice FPS on the 6950 XT. So there we go. Now let's jump into another resolution, dropping it down to 1080p. We see a 14% lead on the 6950 XT. And both GPUs honestly giving an excellent high refresh rate experience here. Well over 100 FPS on the 6800 XT and over 120 FPS on the 6950 XT. So definitely very good experience on both. Also, I just want to say I highly recommend this game if you haven't played it. It is, I finished it recently and quite enjoyed it. Now, how about we jump to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2? I'm testing at 1440p balanced, so this is a balanced preset, not the extreme preset, because this is a competitive game, so people are probably more interested in seeing how high can you push the frames. Really high. AMD GPUs love this game. We're seeing over 170 FPS on our 6800 XT, and just shy of 200 FPS on the 6950 XT at 1440p balanced, an excellent showing. Even at 4K resolution, granted, again, the balanced preset, we're seeing over 100 FPS on the 6800 XT and over 120 FPS on the 6950 XT. I actually played this on the 6950 XT on my 4K OLED screen, which is 120 FPS, and was basically able to max out the refresh rate of the monitor. It was absolutely an excellent experience, and that's about a 15% lead for the 6950 XT. Now, dropping down to 1080p, and this is certainly one of the games where having a high refresh rate 1080p monitor might make sense for these type of GPUs. We're seeing the 6950 XT getting around 250 FPS. So if you were on like a 240 hertz 1080p screen and play a lot of Call of Duty, the 6950 XT seems perfectly well suited for that. Although the 6800 XT is getting you around 220, so absolutely nothing to sneeze at there. They're both giving you an extremely competitive frame rate. Now, before we're done here, how about we take a look at the fact that neither GPU is great for high ray tracing. Like, we saw some ray tracing games do fine here, but games that really push ray tracing like Cyberpunk at the Ultra preset, this is even using FSR2 quality upscaling, and I wouldn't want to go any lower than that for image quality reasons. We're seeing mid-40s on the 6800 XT, about 52 on the 6950 XT. It's a 13% lead for the 6950 XT. I would certainly recommend just playing the game at the normal Ultra preset on these GPUs, where we're seeing at 1440p. We can get over 90 FPS on the 6800 XT and over 100 FPS on the 6950 XT. And once again, no shocker here, we're between 11 and 15%. In other words, it's an 11% lead for the 6950 XT. I did test more games, but I think we're ready for the final results. Okay, so I think the benchmarks have established that the 6950 XT basically has no feature advantages, draws a little bit more power, gives you a little bit more performance, same amount of VRAM, you're still going AMD rather than NVIDIA, so there's really not a lot to distinguish them except for their price and their performance. So, what is the price difference today? It's $630 versus $510, which is about 23.5, so let's just call it 24% more money. And were we getting 24% more performance? No. We were getting in the 11 to 15% more performance range extremely consistently. So, which one is the better price to performance? More frames per dollar? The 6800 XT is more frames per dollar, but the 6950 XT is just more frames overall. So do you get a meaningfully different experience? Now, I've got to argue that I don't think it's that meaningfully different of an experience. Now, I'm not saying you'd be wrong to go with the 6950 XT. Also, I've got to mention that this is just the pricing that I'm seeing right now today if I was buying at this exact second. The 6950 XT has dropped as low as $600, and $600 versus $510, although I've actually seen the 6800 XT hit as low as $500 just a couple of days ago. So if we compare it their lowest prices they've been, that's a 20%, and now you're like 15% more performance for 20% more money, and a little bit worse. But again, depending on the day, you might see the 6800 XTs go as high as $550 or so. And so if you were catching it on a day where it's 600 versus 550, then it's actually clearly a better performance per dollar on the 6950 XT. So I've got to say that it really just depends on what are the prices when you're actually buying. Are you catching a particularly good deal? Because the price to performance on them is fairly even, although, like I said, the prices I'm seeing exactly today does make the 6800 XT a little bit better in terms of price to performance. Now, should you go with either of these at all? Like I said, the 4070 is actually very interesting. I'm not saying you should buy it over these, but I'm also not saying you shouldn't, although I'm sure some people are going to argue about that in the comment section, because remember the 4070 does have some significant advantages in terms of power, like much lower power consumption, a lot of good features. Maybe you're doing productivity work where the NVIDIA GPU makes more sense. Again, has some big disadvantages with the 12 gigabytes of VRAM. Again, the price tag that's a lot higher than the 6800 XT, which gives you about the same just rasterized performance. If you want a lot more of my thoughts on those comparisons, as well as the head-to-head performance differences with the 4070 versus these two GPUs, I've done those separate head-to-heads. So feel free to take a look at those, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.